Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Miami Dolphins at the Philadelphia Eagles in their Week 10 matchup played November 15, 2015. We're going to go over the stats and the scores, and we're going to give our breakdown and analysis. So these teams were scoring on their first drives as Andrew Franks hit a 42-yard field goal to put the Dolphins on top early 3-0. But the Eagles responded, going 64 yards in 4 plays in less than 2 minutes, capped off by a 2-yard touchdown pass from Sam Bradford to Josh Huff. Sturgis hit the extra point, and the Eagles were in the lead by 4, 7-3. But then on the next possession, Miami was backed up against their own end zone. Walter Thurman came in and hit Ryan Tannehill. He fumbled the ball out of bounds for the safety, and it was now 9-3. Philadelphia in the lead by 6. But then the Eagles would score on their next possession as Ryan Matthews, this is the possession after the safety punt, Ryan Matthews would punch it in from a yard out for a touchdown run, and Caleb Sturgis added the extra point, and it was 16-13 with less than 5 minutes left in the first. So that would be it for the first quarter scoring. Then in the second, we actually had a missed field goal by the Eagles, a 32-yard field goal missed, and then Miami took over and they drove into field goal range, and Andrew Franks hit a 22-yard field goal, and it was now a 10-point game with the score Philadelphia 16, Miami 6. So after the missed field goal, then Miami would end up turning things around on a blocked punt. They blocked the punt, and so after the blocked punt, they would end up getting the ball right in the Philadelphia red zone on the 12-yard line. But then they lost a yard, but on 2nd and 11 from the 13, Lamar Miller catches a 13-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Tannehill. Franks adds the extra point, and it was now a 3-point game with the score Philadelphia 16, Miami 13. So that would be the score at halftime. Neither team would score in the fourth, but in the third, we actually saw Sam Bradford leave the game. Bradford left the game, looked like maybe a shoulder injury, and that was with about 5.5 minutes still left in the third. So Sanchez would take over, but Miami would get on the scoreboard next in the fourth quarter with just 5 seconds in. Tannehill, it was a crazy pass. It was actually Connor Barwin got a hand on it. The ball went flying up in the air, and Jarvis Landry came down with it in the end zone for the 4-yard touchdown pass. Franks added the extra point, and now the Dolphins were in the lead for the first time since they kicked that field goal on their first possession of the game when they were up 3-0. But now it was 20-16 with the Dolphins up by 4. So now after scoring the touchdown, the Eagles would get the ball and they would drive down 61 yards in 15 plays in about 4.5 minutes, and they would end up having to settle for a 37-yard field goal by Caleb Sturgis with about 10.5 left still to play in this game to bring the game within 1 point with the score Miami 20, Philadelphia 19. The Dolphins would go 3-and-out on their next possession. The Eagles would get the ball back down by 1, but they would be forced to punt after 5 plays. The Dolphins would go 3-and-out for the second straight possession, and now the Eagles got the ball at midfield on their own 50, well, at the 50. It's no one's 50. But they would get into Miami territory. They got all the way down to the 8-yard line. DeMarco Murray was dropped for a yard loss, and now on 2nd and goal from the 9, Mark Sanchez was intercepted by Reshad Jones in the end zone, and so Miami would take over. And he actually ran the ball out of the end zone down to the 4. But Miami would end up punting the ball after about 8 plays, and now Philadelphia would get the ball back. So down by 1, less than 2 minutes left in this game. Sanchez under center, and he would end up driving Philadelphia up towards midfield. But on 4th and 10 from their own 44, they turned the ball over on downs. And now all that was left to do was for Tannehill to take 2 knees in the victory formation as the Dolphins hold on to win this one 20-19. The Dolphins now 4-5 on the season. They're 500 on the road, 3-3 on the road. And the Eagles are now 500 at home, 2-2. They're also 4-5 on the season. So Miami getting a big win. A big loss for the Eagles is the Eagles, they had a chance to actually, if they would have won this game, then they would have been in first place in the East with how things ended up playing out today. But instead, they're tied for second as they're a half a game back of the Giants. They're tied for second with the Redskins. But the Dolphins in the East, they're still in last place, but they're only in last place by a game. They trail the Jets and the Bills by a game. And of course, the Patriots are in first place in the AFC East. It was a crazy game, but Lamar Miller coming up pretty big in this one. Also, Tannehill, and despite even they let up a safety for, I believe this is the third game in a row, and that's actually ties an NFL record. But they come up big with a road win. Tannehill, 21 for 36, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ajay had 6 carries for 48 yards. Lamar Miller, 16 carries for 43 yards. He also had 6 receptions for 50 yards, which gave him 93 total yards in the game, and he had that receiving touchdown. And Matthews had 5 receptions for 93 yards. Landry had 7 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown. And for the Eagles, Bradford, 19 for 25 for 236 yards and a touchdown before leaving the game in the third quarter. Sanchez came in and was 14 of 23 for 156 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception, as they ran quite a bit of plays from scrimmage, and they ran quite a bit of passing plays. So they had 48 passing plays for the Eagles, but DeMarco Murray still got his carries, and he had 22 carries for 61 yards. Ryan Matthews had 8 carries for 18 yards and a touchdown. Brent Selleck had 4 receptions for 134 yards. Zach Ertz, 7 receptions for 68 yards. And Murray had 6 receptions for 58 yards to go along with his 61 rushing yards, as he ended up with 119 yards total on the game. We look at the kickers. Sturgis, 1 for 2 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And Franks was perfect, though. 2 for 2 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. Ended up being the difference in this game. Jones had a sack, and he also had that interception in the end zone right when it looked like the Eagles would have taken the lead with a field goal or a touchdown, but he comes up with that big interception there. And the Eagles still had another shot, but they were shut down. And Dominican Sue had a sack as well. Shelby had a sack and a forced fumble. And McCain had a sack and a forced fumble also. And for the Eagles, Kendricks had a sack. Thurman had a sack and a forced fumble. Of course, that led to the safety. Connor Barwin and Fletcher Cox each had a half sack, as well as Curry and Graham had half sacks. The Eagles actually had 29 first downs versus just 15 first downs for the Dolphins. On third down, the Eagles 7 of 18, 38% converted. They went for it twice on fourth down, converting 1 for 50%. And with the Dolphins, 5 for 15 on third down, just 33%. Net yards in this game, the Eagles 436, the Dolphins 289. On the ground, the Dolphins netted 99 yards, the Eagles 83. Through the air, the Eagles netted 353 yards, and they allowed 4 sacks, and that led up 39 yards. 190 yards through the air for the Dolphins netted, as Tannehill was sacked 4 times, losing 27 yards. We look at the penalties in this game. 8 against the Dolphins, 84 yards. 7 against the Eagles, 54 yards. The Eagles had 3 fumbles, but they did not lose any of those fumbles. The Dolphins fumbled once. They did not lose it. Of course, they did have that fumble for the safety also. But then we look at the red zone. And in the red zone, 2 for 5 for the Eagles, 40%. 2 for 4 for the Dolphins, 50%. And the time of possession, 31 minutes and 7 seconds for the Eagles, 28 minutes, 53 seconds for the Dolphins. The Dolphins pull out a miraculous victory here. And this is a crazy win for Miami in this game. I mean, it looked like the Eagles had this one. Of course, Bradford went out, and that really hurt Philadelphia. He was having a pretty decent game before he ended up leaving. But the Eagles, they had that interception at the end, and also the Dolphins' defense just really shutting them down, is they only, until that field goal in the fourth. They had shut them down in the second and third quarters, not allowing any points as the Eagles scored 16 right in the first, including that safety. But then throughout the rest of the game, they did not make another trip to the end zone after Ryan Matthews scored with about 5 minutes left in the first. Of course, like I said, they did get that field goal with a little over 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but they weren't able to capitalize on a couple of their opportunities. Sanchez was not able to lead them from behind as the Dolphins had come from behind themselves and taken the lead just seconds into the fourth quarter on that crazy play that I don't know how Jarvis Landry, talking about heads up, for him to come down with that one after Barwin swatted it. It went bouncing up into the air, and somehow Landry came down with it. That ended up being the game-winning touchdown as they won by 1 point, and that was the one that put them ahead, and that was the final score for them, their final score, although the Eagles, like I said, did get that field goal. But then the interception by Jones coming up clutch. It's Miami's secondary. They've been some ball hawks this year. In this game, that was the difference, that turnover right there. And of course, the missed field goal also ended up costing the Eagles as well. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and having a great weekend, and enjoy all the sports.